I was the last living saint from Willow Creek, a hidden village deep in the Appalachian Mountains, where our blood-fed goo worms could cure almost anything, even so-called terminal diseases. 3 months before I descended into this chaos, Margaret Carter, the matriarch of the Carter family, knelt in front of my cabin day and night, begging me to save her son Ethan. Desperate, she kowtowed until her forehead bled and her voice was hoarse, pleading for my help. Back then, I gave in out of compassion, using the goo worm raised in my own body to cleanse Ethan's corrupted bloodstream. The process nearly killed me. When the worm left my body, I withered little by little, my vitality drained with every breath. But I did it. I saved him. And as a thank you, Ethan Carter married me under his mother's blessing, promising lifelong protection and love. What a joke that turned out to be. On the first anniversary of our marriage, he revealed his true nature. He had my entire village kidnapped, forced me to watch as my little sister Emily was hanged in front of me, and shoved my grandmother into a pit of venomous snakes. Then, with no remorse whatsoever, he personally ripped out my heart, liver, and lungs, tossing them to the pigs like kitchen scraps. I still remember the blood-curdling agony, not just from the physical pain, but the betrayal. And all of this because of one letter. Vanessa Carter, his precious adopted sister, had left a suicide note claiming I lied. According to her, Ethan's illness would have cured itself in a month and that my magical goo was just a scam to climb into the Carter family's fortune. She said I threatened her, that I manipulated everyone.
Lies.
And he believed every single word. Before I closed my eyes for what I thought was the last time, I made a vow. If there was any justice in the universe, I wanted to come back not to save anyone, but to destroy the man who obliterated everything I loved. And somehow the universe listened. I woke up back in time, on the exact day Margaret Carter brought me to their home for the first time. This time, I wasn't the naive, grateful girl who bowed to their wealth and charm. This time, I knew exactly what kind of monsters they were. Ethan was sitting in his wheelchair, his face already filled with condescension. I didn't hesitate. I looked him straight in the eye and said clearly, "I'm sorry, Mr. Carter, but I can't cure your condition." For a second, the arrogant look on his face twitched. A tiny flicker of confusion passed through his eyes. Margaret gasped beside him. "Miss Bennett, what are you saying?" she asked, her voice shaking. "I saw you bring people back from the brink. How could you not cure Ethan? Are you saying his illness isn't real, or that he doesn't need healing at all?" Before I could respond, Vanessa swooped in like some loyal little shadow with a cashmere blanket in her hands. She gently draped it over Ethan's legs, then stood and turned to Margaret with a perfect, practiced smile. "Mother, you shouldn't fall for charlatans. These days, scammers are so good they even hire actors to fake miracles. They'll make up dramatic diseases just to win sympathy and cash. This woman might be one of those people." Ethan nodded, cold and smug. "She's right, Mom. I've already started feeling better. I don't need some voodoo witch from the mountains pretending she's saving me. I'll be fine in a month. Watch." Margaret, God bless her deluded soul, ignored them both and turned back to me. She held my hand tightly, eyes filled with hope. "Claire, I begged you to come down from those mountains. I still believe in you. Even if there's only a sliver of a chance, please take a look. If you can help my son, the Carter family will ensure your entire tribe thrives for generations. I'll make you our daughter-in-law in name and spirit." Her voice trembled with sincerity. But I remembered that offer. In my last life, I accepted it, and it led my family to ruin. This time, I wouldn't make the same mistake. As I pulled my hand away, I smiled politely. "Mr.
Carter is right."
I only did some minor tricks back home. I'm afraid Mrs. Carter misunderstood. Please let me leave." Ethan's eyebrows rose, surprised. He didn't expect me to reject his family's wealth and walk away. But then his eyes narrowed, full of contempt. "Claire Bennett, I've seen girls like you. Playing hard to get won't work this time. You're never stepping into the Carter family again." He turned to his bodyguard and barked, "Show her out." I didn't even glance back as I walked out of the Carter mansion. I didn't care what nonsense he told his mother about weddings or miracles. I just wanted to get back to Willow Creek and protect my people while I still had the chance. But I underestimated him. As soon as I reached the airport, a dozen of his men surrounded me and forced me into a black SUV. Before I knew it, I was tied to a chair in some suburban villa, staring at Ethan again. He was pushed in front of me in his wheelchair, arms crossed like a king issuing an order. "I know you can't cure me," he said, "but your goo worm is good for the body. Vanessa's always been frail, and after what she's done for me, she deserves it. Give her the worm. It'll be your way of making up for what you did in our past life." My past life. My stomach twisted. In that life, Vanessa framed me using a forged letter. She claimed I confessed everything that I faked being a saint, that the goo worm was a parlor trick, that Ethan would recover in a month anyway. That single note turned Ethan into a vengeful demon. He believed her lies so deeply that he butchered my people and personally mutilated me. And now, in this life, he had the nerve to say I owed her? I glared at him with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "You really think I owe you anything? Or her?" He blinked, not expecting defiance. "It's just a worm," he said, annoyed. "Bleed a little. It'll come out. I remember that much. We'll stitch you up afterward." He turned to his doctor and nodded. "Cut her wrist." As the scalpel pierced my skin, the pain shot through me, but I didn't scream. I stared right at him and whispered, "Ethan Carter, you will regret this." "Regret?" he scoffed. "You're lucky I'm not killing you again. Now be smart and hand it over, or I'll just go to Willow Creek myself. You think your people are safe." That was it. I concentrated, speaking silently to the goo worm inside me. Unlike him, I knew its soul, its spirit. The goo listened only to me. I told it to protect me and destroy them. Instantly, it surged through my veins and closed the wound, numbing the pain. Then I whispered a second command, "Unleash the miasma." In seconds, the air filled with an invisible toxin. Everyone in the villa collapsed to the ground without a sound. And I, Claire Bennett, the so-called liar from the mountains, bit off my restraints and walked free. I didn't stop to look back. As the last of Ethan Carter's men crumpled in the hall behind me, foaming at the mouth from the goo worm's miasma, I slipped into the night like a shadow that couldn't be caught. I knew exactly where to Goddess was in my first life, after all. I remembered the mistakes I'd made, the people I hadn't saved in time, the chances I missed. So this time, I headed straight to the Thompson estate. The Thompsons were the only family powerful enough to rival the Carters in New York's corporate world. In my previous life, Robert Thompson, head of the Thompson family, had been gravely ill, struggling with a rare degenerative disease that no hospital or specialist could fix. He had once tried to find me, hoping my so-called mountain sorcery could cure him. But back then, I was already trapped in the Carter mansion, slowly dying after giving everything to Ethan. This time, I arrived before it was too late. I walked straight through the Thompson gates, dropped my name, and requested a private meeting with Robert. Within an hour, I was led into a dark room where he lay on a ventilator, his body almost too fragile to move. His assistant looked skeptical, but Robert waved him away. "You're the one from Willow Creek?" he whispered, barely audible. "Yes," I said. "And I can help." I didn't waste time. I summoned the goo worm from within me and placed it near his chest, whispering the words that made it dance through his bloodstream. Robert's eyes rolled back. 10 minutes later, color began returning to his cheeks, and he took his first unassisted breath in weeks. That was the moment the Thompson family switched from suspicion to complete loyalty. Robert clasped my wrist with surprising strength and declared, "Claire Bennett, you saved my life. From this moment on, you have the full support of the Thompson family. We owe you everything." I didn't smile or thank him. I simply said, "Then protect my people. Move them out of Willow Creek immediately. If Ethan Carter can't take my goo worm, he'll go after my tribe. I need them safe before he gets there." Robert nodded and snapped into action, assigning his men to head south with my personal token as proof. For the first time since my return, I felt like I could breathe. With Robert leaving shortly after to oversee his overseas branches, his eldest son Daniel Thompson stepped in. Polished, ambitious, and surprisingly kind, Daniel respected me from the start. He wasn't like Ethan, didn't talk down to me, didn't question my knowledge, didn't pretend I was just a pretty face from the woods. To thank me for saving his father, Daniel arranged a massive press conference and transferred 10% of their company's shares to my name. The moment I stepped into that crowded event hall, I felt every gaze burn into my skin, curious, skeptical, predatory. Journalists surrounded the podium like vultures, waiting to see who the mysterious woman was that earned the Thompson family's fortune overnight. Their whispers followed me. She's from the Appalachians? Some kind of spiritual healer? Did she really cure Mr. Thompson with a worm? Maybe it's all a stunt. Maybe she just slept with him. The assistant stepped forward, lifted the mic, and declared, MS. Claire Bennett is President Thompson's personal savior. Her contribution cannot be measured in dollars, and today's share transfer is a token of our gratitude. Applause followed, but so did something worse. Ethan Carter arrived. He swaggered into the room on crutches, guided by none other than Vanessa. I froze for a second. I hadn't expected him to recover so quickly. Was he really healed, or just putting on a show? He made his way to the front, staring straight at me like a wolf circling prey. Claire Bennett, he said loud enough for the cameras to pick up, you disappeared after conning my mother. Now I find you here, parading around like some hero? You're good. I didn't respond. I didn't have to. He was trying to bait me into reacting. Instead, I studied him. Sure, he was walking again, but I noticed the faint purplish veins on his wrist, the subtle tremor in his hands. He wasn't healed. He was running out of time. But that didn't stop him from putting on a show. He leaned in and whispered, "You fooled my mom, but you won't fool me. If you walk out of here, I'll drag you to court for fraud. Billions in assets transferred to a mountain girl? Let's see how long you last behind bars." Before I could say anything, Vanessa stepped in front of the cameras and smirked. She's not even a real healer, she told the press. She pretends to be some mystical saint from Willow Creek, but all of this is fake. Ethan's illness? It was going to heal on its own. She just wanted the glory. A hush fell over the crowd, then the murmurs began again. That makes sense. No wonder she came out of nowhere. Didn't Mr. Carter recover without her? Ethan shot me a look of triumph, thinking he'd just destroyed my credibility in one swing. But I wasn't afraid. I stepped forward, took the mic, and smiled like I'd been waiting for this moment. Mr. Carter, I said sweetly, I heard you'll be having a wedding in 2 weeks. If you're so confident you're cured, let's wait until then. If you walk down the aisle on your own, healthy and strong, I'll walk into prison myself. But if you don't, I trailed off, letting the silence speak. Ethan stiffened. Vanessa hissed beside him. And the media? They were eating it up. Ethan narrowed his eyes and hissed under his breath, "You're playing with fire." I leaned closer and whispered, "So are you." 2 weeks later, the Carter family sent the Thompson estate a formal wedding invitation. The wedding of Ethan Carter and Vanessa was splashed across every luxury magazine in New York. Socialites, politicians, moguls, all were invited. Everyone waited with bated breath to see if Ethan would walk down that aisle or crumble. And of course, I went. I didn't hide. I wore a sleek black dress and walked in beside Daniel Thompson, heads turning, cameras flashing. Whispers followed me. That's her, the so-called saint. Didn't she cause the rift between the two families? I heard she brought someone back from the dead. Or just conned her way into billions. But as the ceremony hour approached, something strange happened. The Carter family didn't show up. Not the groom. Not the bride. Not even Mrs.
Carter.
The ballroom was full of guests and luxury, but empty of hosts. I felt a chill. The goo worm in my body was squirming, agitated. It always did this when there was decay in the air. Then suddenly, the doors burst open. Margaret Carter stumbled in, her face pale, makeup streaked with tears. She rushed to me, fell to her knees in front of everyone and sobbed, "Claire, please. Ethan is dying. Save him. I beg you." Just like last time, but this time, it was too late. I looked down at Margaret Carter, this woman who had once stood tall and proud, who claimed she would give me the world if I saved her son, and now she was on her knees, mascara dripping, voice trembling, hands clutching mine like I was some kind of divine last resort. She didn't care about pride anymore. She didn't care about saving face in front of hundreds of elite guests and media.
She just wanted Ethan to live.
I didn't respond right away. My eyes swept over the lavish ballroom filled with whispers and raised eyebrows, glittering gowns and carefully styled arrogance, and all I could think was, this is exactly how it ends. A few weeks ago, they laughed at me, called me a fraud, smeared my name in every headline they could touch. Now the same people were hanging on my silence, waiting to see if I'd say yes. I didn't answer Margaret, not yet. Instead, I turned to Daniel beside me. "Take me to him," I said quietly. He gave a nod and cleared the way, and just like that, the room fell silent. The so-called mountain witch, the con artist, the woman with a worm in her body, was being escorted into the Carter estate like a goddess. How poetic. The moment we walked in, the stench of decay hit me like a wall. It was thick, sickly sweet, the kind of rot that told you something inside was already dead. Ethan was lying in his bed, limp and pale, his skin patchy and bruised, his lips nearly black. His chest rose in jagged, desperate gasps, every breath a battle. But when he saw me, something lit up behind his fevered eyes. "Claire," he whispered. "Claire, please save me. I won't marry Vanessa, I swear. I'll do anything. I know I was wrong. I know I hurt you. But you're the only one who can help me now." I stared at him. Not with pity. Not with warmth. Just a cold, detached curiosity. It was fascinating, really, how fast people changed when death kissed their throat. In our last life, I had crawled to him, bleeding, begging. I asked him to spare my sister. I pleaded for my grandmother. He didn't blink. He ripped me apart like I was nothing. And now he was trembling like a scared little boy, asking for my mercy. I felt nothing. Not hate. Not love. Just emptiness. Margaret hovered behind me, clutching her pearls like they were a rosary. "Please, Claire. I only have one son. I'll give you anything. Name it. 10% of the Carter estate.
20.
The wedding's off. We'll marry you instead, if that's what you want." I didn't answer. I didn't even look at her. Because I knew whatever she promised me now, it wasn't real. It wasn't love. It wasn't redemption. It was fear, plain and simple. Then Vanessa, who'd been silent until now, stepped forward, her face twisted with disbelief. "What are you doing, Mom? She's a liar. She's the reason Ethan's like this. He wouldn't be dying if you hadn't let her back in our lives." Margaret snapped. It was the first time I'd ever seen her angry at Vanessa. She turned, her hand striking Vanessa's cheek so hard it echoed across the room. "Shut your mouth. If you hadn't lied to him, if you hadn't interfered, we wouldn't be in this mess. You ruined everything. You're nothing but a curse. I should have left you at the orphanage where I found you." Vanessa's face crumbled, hand on her cheek, mouth agape. For once, she had no comeback. I looked at Ethan again. He was reaching out toward me, his fingers trembling, barely able to lift them. "Claire, please," but I didn't take his hand. I didn't move closer. I just asked, "Do you have Tianshan snow lotus in the house?" Margaret blinked, confused. Yes, I think we still have some. From the herbal vault." "I'll get it." A maid scrambled out, returning moments later with a tightly sealed crystal case. Inside, a snow-white lotus glowed faintly, glistening with condensation like it had been plucked straight from a sacred mountaintop. I pricked my fingertip, letting 2 drops of blood fall onto the lotus, then crushed it in a silver bowl and stirred until it became a milky paste. Without saying a word, I held Ethan's jaw open and fed him the mixture. 3 minutes later, his breathing slowed. The color returned to his cheeks. The rotting black spots on his chest stopped spreading. His eyelids fluttered. And then he woke up. Margaret gasped and ran to his side, holding his hand, sobbing in relief. Ethan, baby, you're okay? You're going to be okay. He turned his head weakly toward me, eyes shining. Claire, thank you, I knew you'd save me. I stared at him, and I smiled. But not kindly. You're awake, I said coolly, but you're not okay. That was just to stop you from rotting right this second. You've got 3 days left for at most. There's no treatment left that can save you. Not from me. Not from any doctor. Not even a god. The hope in his eyes died instantly. It was like watching a candle get snuffed out. What? He whispered. Margaret looked up at me in horror. What do you mean? You healed him. You said, I said I'd look at him. I interrupted. And I did. He's dying. You asked for a miracle. I gave you a delay. That's all I have left to give. The silence that followed was deafening. Vanessa finally found her voice and screamed, Liar. You did this to him. You poisoned him. You faked the whole thing. She turned toward the media that had somehow trickled into the room behind us, no doubt tipped off by the Carter PR team hoping to spin this into a fairy tale comeback. She's manipulating all of you. She pretended to heal Ethan just to make herself look like some kind of goddess. But it was the Snow Lotus that worked, not her. Whispers erupted. Reporters scribbled. Phones recorded. She's right. That lotus is ancient. Maybe it did all the work. What if Claire just knew when to administer it? What if Ethan would have recovered anyway? I didn't flinch. I'd been dragged through the dirt before. I was used to it. Ethan, on the other hand, was cracking. He turned his glassy eyes to me, pleading again. You're the meow saint. You saved a man once who was dead for 3 days. I read about it. You can save me. You have to. I shook my head slowly. That man was in suspended animation from a rare poison. You were never poisoned, you were decaying from the inside out. The goo worm can repair damage, not reverse death. You missed your chance. He let out a broken sob and grabbed the water glass beside him, hurling it at me. It missed, landing with a dull clatter on the floor. Then why didn't you say so earlier? He screamed. Why didn't you tell me I was dying? I took a slow breath and looked him straight in the eye. Because you wouldn't have believed me. You never believed me. Not in the last life, and not in this one. So I figured, why waste my breath? Margaret stared at me, helpless and shaken. I gave her a sad smile. I did what I could. Now your son can say his goodbyes. You're welcome. I turned to leave. That should have been the end. But Ethan's voice gold and crack stopped me in my tracks. Don't let her leave. Margaret blinked. What? Don't let her leave, he repeated, louder this time, desperation masking as command. She still has the goo worm. She said it can heal anything. Then I want it. I want it now. He looked at his mother. Lock her up if you have to. I'll find a way to force it out of her. For 1 second, Margaret hesitated. And then she picked up the phone and started dialing security. My blood ran cold. And yet I wasn't surprised. Not really. Because deep down I knew this was who they always were. I turned, lips curled in bitter amusement. You'd really chain me up again after everything? But before anyone could touch me, a familiar voice rang out at the door, calm but authoritative. Anyone who lays a hand on Claire Bennett will have to answer to the Thompson family. Daniel stood tall, flanked by several towering men in suits. He stepped forward, nodding politely to Margaret, then met my eyes. My father sent me to bring you home. Let's go. I didn't hesitate. I walked straight into the safety of the Thompson family, leaving Ethan Carter trembling in that bed, his rotten kingdom falling to dust behind him. As we drove away from the Carter estate, I didn't say a single word. I stared out the tinted window, letting the glow of the city pass me by like a movie I wasn't part of. I had escaped hell once again, but it didn't feel like victory. It felt like relief mixed with a strange hollowness I couldn't quite name. Daniel sat beside me, quietly respectful, his hands folded in his lap, occasionally glancing my way, but never pushing. Eventually, he cleared his throat and said, I brought something back for you, Claire. I turned slightly toward him, not really expecting anything, my mind still full of Ethan's voice and that rotten stench that lingered no matter how far we drove.
À surprise?
I asked, not bothering to sound curious. Sort of, he replied, and didn't say another word. We pulled up to the Thompson estate, the familiar gates opening slowly, and as soon as the car stopped in front of the main house, the door burst open and a blur of motion flew toward me. Sister? I didn't even have time to process before Emily threw herself into my arms. I stumbled slightly, then hugged her back tightly as the world spun. Behind her, slowly, leaning on a cane but very much alive, was my Grandma Rose. My legs gave out. I dropped to my knees, holding my sister while staring at my grandmother with tear-blurred vision. You're alive, I whispered, my voice cracking. You're here. She didn't say anything, just walked forward and gently placed a weather hand on my head, like she always did when I was a child. That was it. I broke. All the strength I'd held onto for weeks, all the rage and vengeance and cold composure I'd shattered right there in the Thompson family foyer. I sobbed into my sister's hair, held my grandmother's hand, and cried like the girl I used to be before the world turned me into a blade. Daniel stood quietly nearby, not interrupting, just watching with soft eyes that didn't judge. Later, after I'd calmed down and we were all inside, I pulled Daniel aside and said, "Thank you. I didn't think I'd ever see them again. You don't know what this means to me." He smiled, and for the first time, I saw something in his face that wasn't just gratitude or respect. It was admiration, maybe even something deeper. I brushed it off. "This is the least I could do," I told him, gesturing for him to sit. "Let me repay you. That left eye of yours sits nearly blind, isn't it?" His posture stiffened, but he nodded. "I never mentioned that. You didn't have to. I noticed the moment I met you. I didn't wait for approval. I summoned the goo worm, whispered the command, and placed it gently on his temple. It shimmered for a second, then disappeared into his skin. Daniel flinched but didn't move. Within minutes, the cloudy dullness in his left eye started to fade, replaced by clarity and light. He blinked rapidly, stunned. "Claire, I can see," he said, almost like he didn't believe it. "It's crystal clear." "Good," I said with a small smile. "Now we're even." But we both knew that wasn't true. That night, Daniel got a call. He returned with tense shoulders and an update I expected but dreaded. "Ethan sent men to Willow Creek. They were trying to track down your tribe. But thanks to the relocation, all they found was an empty village. They came up empty-handed." I nodded slowly. "He's desperate. He thinks he can extract the goo worm by force, like it's some physical organ." "But he's wrong," Daniel said. "Right? Dead wrong," I confirmed. "The goo worm only listens to me. No matter what he does, he'll never get it." He hesitated, then added, "That's not all." Words out, Ethan's deteriorating fast. Everyone in the business world knows he's on the brink. And the Carter family stock is plummeting. It's chaos over there. Dad's already ordered us to begin acquisition proceedings. I didn't smile, but I felt a strange sense of peace. Not because Ethan was dying, but because the Carter family, with all its cruelty and fake charm, was finally collapsing under its own rot. The next morning, Robert Thompson returned from abroad, healthy and walking on his own 2 feet. The business world was buzzing. A man once declared terminally ill was now leading board meetings and smiling in interviews, all because of me. The same press that once whispered scam artist now called me a miracle healer and the mysterious saint of Willow Creek. Of course, that didn't stop people from spinning their own narratives. During a scheduled press conference, an anonymous journalist asked, "Miss Bennett, now that the Carters are struggling, do you still plan to press legal charges for what they did to you?" I just stared into the camera and said, "Some things don't need a courtroom. Karma always arrives. And sometimes she shows up wearing heels and a smile." The clip went viral in less than an hour. While I maintained public grace, I still kept my eye on Ethan's condition. I knew he was declining, but I also knew his mind hadn't changed. When a man like Ethan sees death on the horizon, he doesn't reflect panics. And panic makes monsters out of cowards. What I didn't expect was how the Carters tried to claw their way back up. Fake news started surfacing. Allegations that I was using hypnotic suggestions, that I had manipulated Robert Thompson with ancient herbs and seduction, that I'd fabricated my sane identity to con my way into corporate power. Vanessa even gave an interview, tearfully claiming, Claire poisoned Ethan out of jealousy. She couldn't stand that he loved me. I laughed so hard watching that broadcast, I nearly spilled my tea. Loved you, I muttered to the screen.
He used you.
Just like he used everyone else. But public sympathy is fickle. With enough tears and editing, Vanessa was starting to win some hearts. So I let them run their mouths. Meanwhile, Daniel and his team took advantage of the Carter chaos and swooped in, buying up Carter shares like wolves at a feast. Within weeks, the Thompson family held majority control. I didn't have to lift a finger. Ethan was dying, Vanessa was screaming on live TV, and Margaret was too broken to even defend her own house. And yet, none of it felt as satisfying as I thought it would. One night, I sat alone on the balcony, staring out at the skyline, when Daniel approached. "You okay?" he asked gently. "You should be happy. You won."
Did I?
I whispered. "Ethan's dying. The Carters are ruined. My people are safe.
But I don't feel happy.
Just tired." He sat beside me, silent for a long moment. Then he said, "I have something to tell you. Something personal." I looked over at him. His expression was calm, but there was something vulnerable in his eyes. "Go on." He took a deep breath. "I like you, Claire. I think I've liked you since the moment you stormed into our house and saved my father's life like it was nothing. I know you've been hurt beyond anything I can imagine, but I want to be someone you can trust. Someone who stays." I didn't answer immediately. I studied him, really studied him, his sincerity, his warmth, the steadiness that was so unlike the toxic firestorm Ethan had been. And yet, my heart didn't move. Not because Daniel wasn't good, but because I was already hollow where love used to live. "You're kind, Daniel," I said softly. "You really are. But I'm not looking for a savior or a future right now. I just want peace.
Quiet.
Maybe a little time in the mountains with my family." He nodded, clearly disappointed, but too respectful to argue. "Then I'll wait," he said. "Or not. Whatever you need." I smiled faintly. "You're a good man. But some wounds don't heal with kindness." That weekend, I told Grandma Rose and Emily we were going home. Back to Willow Creek. Back to where the wind smelled like moss and the sky felt close enough to touch. I needed distance from the glittering madness of New York. But just before we left, Emily grabbed my hand, her eyes twinkling. "Sister, can we stay a little longer? I like it here. Grandpa Thompson is so sweet. And I like Daniel." I raised a brow. "You like Daniel?"
She blushed.
"Not like that. I mean, maybe like that. But he's nice. And he listens to me." I stared at her, half amused and half stunned. "He listens to everyone, Emily. That's his job." She pouted. "Well, I like him anyway." I sighed.
"Fine.
"We'll stay a little longer. But just until Mr. Thompson's 80th birthday party. After that, we're leaving." "Deal," she chirped, hugging me. I knew she wouldn't let go of Daniel that easily. And honestly, I didn't have the heart to deny her. After all, she deserved happiness more than anyone. I just hoped she'd be smarter with her heart than I was. Mr. Thompson's 80th birthday came faster than I expected, and with it came a lavish celebration that seemed to stretch across the entire estate. The guest list was packed with every billionaire, politician, and power broker from coast to coast, but I didn't care about any of them. I wore a simple navy gown, kept my hair down, and stayed close to Grandma Rose and Emily the entire night. I thought I'd be invisible, just another ornament in the background of Daniel's big, proud family event, but apparently, being the saint of Willow Creek, made anonymity impossible. Everyone wanted to talk to me. The granddaughter of the Montana steel tycoon asked if I could heal her allergies. A retired senator's wife wanted to know if I could bless her womb for one last baby. Someone even offered me $500,000 just to touch the hem of my dress. I smiled politely, dodged every request, and escaped to the garden as soon as I could. I thought I was alone until Daniel appeared beside me, carrying 2 champagne flutes and a hesitant smile. "For you," he said, handing me one. "It's just juice. Thought you'd want a clear head for the next part." I arched a brow. "The next part?" He took a breath, and suddenly the confident, polished CEO looked nervous. "Claire, I know I said I'd wait, and I meant it. But I also don't want to miss my chance to be honest with you while you're still here." "So here at ISI like you?" "No, I think I'm in love with you. And I know you've been through hell. I'm not trying to fix you. I just want to be the one who walks beside you if you'll let me." I froze, glass halfway to my lips, staring at him like the words had knocked the air out of me. And for a second, a very small second, I felt something flicker inside my hope, maybe, or fear disguised as hope. But then it was gone. Snuffed out like a candle in the wind. I set the flute down on the stone ledge, turned to face him, and said softly, "Daniel, I appreciate you. You've been kind, steady, generous, and that's exactly why I can't accept this." His face fell, just barely, but he kept his composure. "Why not?" I looked up at the stars. "Because kindness can't fill the space where love used to live. And because I've been burned so badly, I don't think I'll ever trust that kind of fire again." He nodded slowly, like he already knew. "Is it about Ethan?" "It's about everything," I said. "It's about being a girl who once believed in promises, and then died because of them." Daniel didn't try to argue. He didn't beg. He just stepped back and whispered, "Then I hope one day, when you're ready, you'll let someone in again, even if it's not me." I smiled faintly. "Thank you for understanding." The next morning, I told Emily and Grandma it was time. We packed our things, said quiet goodbyes to the Thompson staff, and prepared to head back to Willow Creek. Emily pouted the whole time. "But why?" she whined. "We're safe here. The food is amazing. Grandpa Thompson tells the best stories. And Daniel, well, he's really sweet to me." "Exactly," I said. "He's sweet to you. And that's dangerous." "Why?" she asked, confused. "Because sweet things are the easiest to get addicted to," I said. "And when they disappear, they hurt the most." She didn't get it, not fully, but she didn't argue again. We boarded a private plane arranged by Daniel, and I kept my eyes out the window the whole time, watching the city grow smaller and smaller until it disappeared beneath clouds. It felt like I could finally breathe again. The air in Willow Creek was as fresh and pure as I remembered, even sweeter now that my people were safe and alive. We returned to a rebuilt village, clean, quiet, untouched by Carter blood. My people welcomed me home with firelight and song, and for the first time in both lives, I felt like I belonged. But peace didn't last long. A week later, a courier arrived at our gate, carrying a single letter, sealed in black wax. I opened it carefully and read the familiar scrawl. It was from Ethan. "Claire," it said, "I don't know how much longer I have. But before I go, I need you to know one thing. I didn't just kill you. I killed our child." My hands went cold. I dropped the letter. Emily picked it up, confused. "What does he mean?" she asked, and I couldn't speak. Not at first. The memory came flooding back so violently I had to sit down. In my last life, right before our anniversary, I had found out I was pregnant. I never got the chance to tell him. That morning, I had gone to surprise him with the news, hoping that maybe, just maybe, it would bring out some kind of humanity in him. But before I could say anything, he snapped. He accused me of manipulation, tied me down, and performed the unthinkable. And through it all, I kept screaming one thing over and over: "I'm pregnant. Ethan, I'm pregnant." But he didn't listen. Or maybe he didn't care. Either way, our child never had a chance. In this life, I never got pregnant again. But the grief of that lost soul stayed with me. I closed my eyes and whispered, "That's why he's dying." Not because I cursed him, because karma finally caught up. A few days later, news broke across every outlet in the country. Ethan Carter was dead. His body had completely collapsed, blood pouring from every orifice, skin rupturing in violent spasms, as if the rot inside him had finally devoured everything. Vanessa died shortly after, overdosing in a desperate attempt to gain public sympathy. Margaret was left alone, a broken woman sitting in a silent mansion, surrounded by ghosts. And me? I stood at the edge of the village, staring into the forest, wondering why I didn't feel happier. I had everything I wanted. Revenge, closure, safety, my family. But my heart still felt like a hollow drum. I had lived 2 lives just to bury the people who had hurt me, and in the process, I had buried parts of myself too. The parts that once dreamed, that once believed. I was free now. But freedom didn't feel like sunshine. It felt like standing in an empty field, wind brushing your skin, and realizing there's no one left to chase or run from. One evening, as we were preparing dinner over a wood fire, Emily looked at me with her usual spark and said, "Do you think Daniel will come visit?" I looked at her, really looked at her youth, her hope, her stubborn belief that good things could still happen. I thought of Daniel's quiet voice, his steady gaze, his confession. "He might," I said. "And if he does, we'll welcome him." But I already knew. He wouldn't come unless I called. And I wouldn't call.
Not now.
Maybe not ever. Because after losing everything once and barely surviving it a second time, I wasn't willing to gamble my peace on anyone else's promises. Not even his. The seasons changed quietly in Willow Creek, and with them, so did I. The weight of revenge had settled into the soil like fallen leaves, dry, brittle, no longer heavy on my shoulders. I spent my mornings picking herbs with Grandma Rose, afternoons teaching local kids how to grind roots and identify the clean streams from the poison ones, and evenings sitting beside the fire while Emily braided my hair and recited the latest gossip from the village like it was royal court drama. The quiet was healing in a way nothing else had ever been. It didn't erase the past, but it softened it, sanded off the jagged edges, so I could breathe without bleeding. One day, Emily ran up to me, eyes bright with mischief, holding a carved wooden box.
"You got a letter," she said.
I frowned. No one wrote to me anymore, not unless they needed something. But this envelope was handwritten, sealed in green wax with the Thompson family crest. I opened it slowly, careful not to tear the edges, and inside was a single sentence written in Daniel's familiar, clean, decisive script. "I hope the mountains are still treating you gently. I'll never forget the peace in your eyes when you left." That was it.
No confessions. No demands.
Just a soft echo of a goodbye from someone who once loved me in silence. I stared at it for a long time before tucking it into the box and placing it on the top shelf, where I kept everything I wasn't ready to burn. That night, as the wind howled gently through the trees and the stars stretched wide above us, Grandma Rose spoke without looking up from her weaving. "You're quieter these days," she said. I smiled faintly. "I've said everything that needed to be said." She nodded once, like that was enough. I thought that was the end of the conversation, but then she added, "You did well, Claire. You saved your people. You brought your sister and I home. You faced your demons. That's more than most can say, after one lifetime, let alone 2. My breath hitched slightly, but I masked it with a cough. "It wasn't heroism, Grandma. It was survival." "Same thing, child," she murmured, eyes never leaving her loom. "The difference is what you choose to do after you've survived." That stuck with me. For days. I began walking longer paths through the mountains, sometimes alone, sometimes with Emily skipping behind me asking questions about everything from boys to bugs. She was growing into herself, curious, sharp, gentle. I had saved her in this life, and watching her bloom was its own kind of reward. Sometimes, I'd see her sneak glances toward the main road leading out of the village, the one Daniel would have taken, if he'd ever come. But he never did.
And she stopped asking.
That was the beautiful thing about time. It taught even the most hopeful hearts when to let go. One evening, I sat by the creek, tossing stones into the water, watching the ripples swallow each other, when I felt the goo worm shift inside me. Not in fear, not in alarm, just awareness. Like it knew I had finally settled into peace, and it could too. I placed my hand over my chest, closed my eyes, and whispered, "You've done enough." We both have. It pulsed once, then quieted. For the first time since I was a child, the goo worm went still, no longer responding to threat or pain, but resting, truly resting. A part of me, the part that had always been on edge, finally exhaled. I didn't need it anymore. I was no longer a weapon. I was no longer someone's cure, someone's bride, someone's puppet. I was just Claire Bennett, healer of a hidden village, sister, granddaughter, daughter of the mountain. That was enough. Weeks passed, then months, and one morning Emily ran to me with wide eyes and a flushed face. "They're talking about you again in the city," she said, holding up her tablet. "You're trending. There's a documentary about the fall of the Carter dynasty, and they're calling you the woman who made it happen." I chuckled, barely glancing at the screen. Let them talk. That world isn't ours anymore. "Don't you want to watch it?" she asked. "You're like famous now." I tousled her hair. "I don't need the world to remember me. I just need you to." She grinned, but there was a softness in her eyes. I knew she'd remember. A few weeks later, a traveler passed through the village, asking for medicine. He'd heard stories about a woman in the Appalachian Mountains who could bring people back from the edge of death. I gave him a poultice and told him to rest, to drink water and stay warm, and he left with tears in his eyes, calling me a miracle. I didn't correct him. If it helped him heal, what was the harm in a little myth? But inside, I knew I wasn't a saint. I was just someone who'd survived long enough to learn the difference between love and possession, between kindness and control, between revenge and justice. Ethan had once asked me if I hated him enough to curse him. But what he never understood was that hate wasn't the worst thing I felt toward him. It was pity. He died never knowing what it meant to love without taking, to give without expecting. And in the end, he wasn't taken by my goo worm or some elaborate plot. He was eaten from the inside out by his own sickness, both physical and spiritual. He destroyed himself. I just watched it happen. I did have one last thing to do, though. I visited his grave. Alone.
No flowers.
Just my presence. The tombstone was sleek, black marble, far too beautiful for the man it marked. It read, "Ethan Carter, beloved son, visionary leader, taken too soon." I stood there for a long time before whispering, "You weren't taken. You were given every chance. And you wasted all of them." I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I simply turned and walked away, never looking back. That night, I lit incense at the altar in our village, knelt before the carved stone of our ancestors, and placed a small white bundle at its base. Inside was a ribbon, the one I tied around the note announcing my pregnancy in that first life. The child I never got to meet, never got to name, but still carried in my heart like a shadow. "I don't know who you would have been," I whispered. "But I hope wherever you are, you know I didn't forget." The flame flickered, and for a moment, I could have sworn I felt warmth brush against my cheek, like a breath, like a blessing. After that night, I stopped dreaming about Ethan. I stopped seeing his face in the flames or hearing his voice in the wind. It was like his memory had finally left me, dissolved into ash and starlight. I wasn't haunted anymore. I was whole. Not healed, some wounds leave permanent marks, but whole. And that was enough. Emily eventually grew up and chose to stay in Willow Creek, though she traveled often, bringing back news and stories from the outside world. Grandma Rose passed peacefully in her sleep 2 winters later, surrounded by everyone who loved her. We buried her under the oldest tree in the village, beside the roots she once sang to. And me? I stayed. I taught. I healed. I laughed again, though softer. I loved again, though not romantically. I found peace not in the arms of a man, but in the soil beneath my feet and the sky above my head. And that, after everything, was the most beautiful ending I could have asked for.